Passo la parola a Aldo Di Russo che curerà una serie di collegamenti internazionali.
Buongiorno. Allora, un solo minuto per spiegarvi che cosa sta per succedere. Noi abbiamo qualche giorno fa tradotto in inglese alcune delle nostre tesi, di quelle che Sergio vi ha illustrato all'inizio, e le ho fatte leggere ad alcuni colleghi con i quali lavoro in giro per il mondo. Non immaginavo un'adesione così entusiasta per davvero da parte di diverse persone che adesso vedrete. Ve li introduco soltanto un attimo prima di cambiare la lingua tra l'italiano e l'inglese e farvi sentire la loro testimonianza. Il primo che sentirete è dalla Francia, Enrico Panai. Enrico Panai è un esperto di big data e di intelligenza artificiale, ma attenzione, ci racconterà una cosa molto interessante rispetto a alcuni interventi che ho sentito, perché è un filosofo. In Francia sono molto avanti su il problema dell'etica dell'intelligenza artificiale. Ci racconterà come si fa a imporre o a condizionare un'azienda che usa un sistema di intelligenza artificiale all'interno di uno Stato. Poi sentiremo, non nell'ordine, ma l'ultimo che sentiremo è Francisco Diaz, un economista portoghese che si occupa di economia del turismo e che è su posizioni molto critiche rispetto a tutto il discorso del turismo di massa. Lui è un grande nemico del capitalismo finanziario. Ci dirà la sua posizione a proposito di questo. Sentiremo da Atene Nikos Tomaidis, che è un signore che si occupa dello sviluppo culturale di un territorio, il territorio di Cavalla, per chi è pratico della Grecia sta un po' al nord, per chi è pratico della storia di Roma è quello dove sta la città di Filippi, quindi è un pezzo anche della nostra storia. Sentiremo Mona Efrian Selim, collegata da Teheran, è una signora architetto che si occupa lei è insegnante nel centro di alta cultura, di alta formazione, scusate, di Teheran, e lei si occupa di una ricerca che, quando me l'ha raccontata, io non immaginavo neanche che esistesse, cioè come il mondo del digitale insieme al Covid, avendo cambiato la fotografia del mondo, ha cambiato il modo di progettare gli spazi e quindi sta cambiando il modo di amministrare gli spazi, che se non vengono progettati in modo diverso rischiano di essere amministrati come li abbiamo amministrati prima. Quindi all'interno dei due discorsi chiave che faceva Sergio stamattina, saper fare e elenco dei bisogni, noi adesso li andiamo ad elencare e sentiremo le loro testimonianze. Welcome everybody.
C'è Nikos.
Chi?
Nikos.
Solo Nikos?
Stanno connettendo.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Good morning.
I don't know if...
Nikos, are you in?
Yes, I am in. Can you hear me?
Okay. Nikos, I just introduced you in Italian, and welcome to La Transizione. You are connected to the audience of the Congress La Transizione alle Frattocchie. We are waiting for your witness. And what's the role of, for instance, the political administration and territories? How do you manage social cohesion? And I'm curious to know what Greece and Italy can do together. Okay, your stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation, first of all. I think I understood some about, I think I understood something from the introduction. You mentioned the word Philippi, so I realized that you were talking about Kavala in the north of Greece and the ancient site of Philippi, which is now a UNESCO cultural heritage spot. So one answer to your question, what could Italy and Greece together, is what they did for thousands of years, culture. But this is only one answer to, let's say, a very idealistic world. Okay. Your previous question was quite more important, I think, about what do we do about social cohesion and how do we cope with all the problems we are facing nowadays. Well, you obviously know that Greece and I guess other countries, representatives of countries participating in this forum, came out of something like 10-year-old crisis. And after this crisis, we basically had to adjust to a new reality, to some new austerity measures perhaps, to some new issues arising within the European reality. Unfortunately, on top of that, and after the end, let's say, the end of the crisis, which I think crisis never ends, really, economic crisis, I mean, it was the pandemic, which basically, once again, let's say that it affected heavily the social fabric, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas, I would say, especially in rural areas, whereas you realize health facilities and other kind of infrastructure is more limited in comparison to the urban areas. So in basic terms, you're speaking to a person who is engaged into, let's say, using European Union funds in order to promote entrepreneurship in a country which was heavily affected the past 10, 15 years from the economic crisis and nowadays with COVID. So I guess this is what I have to say generally and briefly about what's happening at the moment in Greece. And may I say in rural areas that I know better rural areas, as I'm a rural geographer, trained rural geographer, PhD in rural geography. So I don't know if you have any other questions, Aldo, relating to the issue of the forum. Yeah. If you can hear me.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nikos. And it's Enrico. Okay. Good morning, yes. Enrico. Welcome to the
Hi.
La Transizione. And okay, Enrico, the digital revolution, as we say, can be an opportunity and a break as well. We are in the era of digital revolution, but digital is not a technology. In this way of thinking is an environment that where we spend time when we are on life, and we say, as we say, and it produces sociality and so on. So produces also artificial intelligence you are working with. We are yes. waiting for your opinion and what we can do together politically dealing with the ethic of artificial intelligence.
Yes, thank you, Aldo, for your questions. Let's start from the beginning. Artificial intelligence is just a set of statistical techniques that help us to decide, to choose, to catalog, and by doing so, is transferring the decision-making power to statistical tools. There is nothing about intelligence in artificial intelligence. They can just do better complex tasks, anything else more. And there is no more the human value in the choice. What is the difference between us and AI is the value that we give to choices semantically. But now is the algorithms that are trying to decide using a more syntactic way of thinking. So they can do stuff, but they don't know why they are doing so. The reality is that if we can use a metaphor, imagine that we are driving with our car in a motorway and our car is running at 100 kilometers per hour. But now you see speeding around you new cars that are going very fast, but at a speed that you couldn't imagine a few years ago. They are running at more than 10,000 kilometers per hour, so they passes you on the left, on the right, up your cars, and that's very uncomfortable for you. And that's the period we are living. We are together in this motorway where you cannot see more the difference from the old offline life that we lived before, and not only the online life. We see two different cars, our car and artificial intelligence cars that are very fast. That's good, because if I want to go somewhere very fast and I have artificial intelligence, I can use those cars to arrive before to a target. The point is that we are living in a period of transition where we sometimes use artificial intelligence that go very, very fast. Sometimes we use our car that is much slower. Sometimes we walk, and so we are much slower. And the artificial intelligence are nudging us, are moving our way of deciding. So this can cause a kind of uncomfortable feeling, because it's a very disruption that is happening at the moment. And we have several ways to minimize the problem of this transition. One is technically, so it means that we have to build standards to have a better quality of artificial intelligence that can build a good environment for ourselves. But that's not enough, because it takes 3 or 4 years to create a standard. So we need rules, and that's why the European Union are creating new rules for ruling the artificial intelligence systems. But even they only published the first draft a few months ago, and we still don't know how to apply, and the rules will become operational in a few years. So still we don't know how to manage artificial intelligence in a standardized way. The third thing is important. We need independent audit from third-party bodies that verify the use we have with artificial intelligence in a completely independent way without conflict of interest. But the four things are the most important, and that we could use ethics to anticipate problems that artificial intelligence could create in the future. Now, ethics is important because with ethics we can develop a responsible AI and AI for good. And this is good. The real problem now is that we need more ethicists. We do not have enough philosophers in the market to raise the right ethical issues and to try to find the right solution for ethical issues. So it's true that the ethics committee start to be created in big enterprises. But we, the philosopher, felt that the majority of time those ethics committees are composed by not philosophers. And that's a problem. And that's why in France, in Paris, with a group of ethicists that works with AI, we decided to create a collective, the Éthiciens du numérique, just to improve the presence of a philosopher in the market. Because trying to create an ethical committee without philosopher is like building a hospital without a surgeon or without doctor. It's not credible. And what is happening just at the moment is that. So what we need to help the artificial intelligence to develop better, we need that the politics will help us to improve the presence of philosopher and to think of not of res publica as an object that has to be managed by the politicians, but as a ratio publica, in the sense not of rationality, but in the sense of Latin sense of relation. The politics should help us to find a new way to create sustainable relations between us and between the new technology, because we need to create the right environment, and most important, we need to avoid something very dangerous, the ethical washing, the same things that happened with greenwashing in the last years that didn't work. We should avoid to have a kind of ethical washing when talking about artificial intelligence and new technologies, because we need to give new meaning, new semantic values to these technologies to create our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enrico. And I think you focus two important assets of the transition. One is the use of philosophy, and the other one is the how to transform, how to insert the ethics into the digital technology. Thank you really very much, and keep in touch. Next. Non sento. Okay. Next one is Francisco Diaz. I know Francisco since. Good morning, Francisco. Welcome to the conference. Francisco, we are used to consider cinema, theater, literature, poetry to be culture. You are an economist and you work in the field of application of tourism as a researcher, first of all. So the management of the tourism in the cultural industry is a culture or can be a culture. What is your position, and how tourism, the industry, can be help in the transition, politically in the transition?
Hi, hello everybody. Hello, Nico's pleasure. Hello, Enrico and Mona. Nice to meet you again. Thank you, but I'm not an economist. I'm from master degree in social psychology and PhD in tourism science. And this is very good. If I was an economist, I couldn't be here right now to say what I can say now. Because the main problem, I think, of tourism is that it is framed as economic branch. This is when you confuse the cause and consequence of a sequence of factors, you don't understand nothing. And because the output of tourism is money, a lot of my colleagues interpret tourism as economic phenomenon. It is not. I try to explain that using slides because my English is not so good as it should be. But look, let's start. If you look at behavior of people at beach around 100 or 150 years ago and compare with the behavior of people in beach right now, in same beach, in same place, you see a totally different scenario. Why? We have to consider that tourism is framed by cultural patterns. It's an expression of culture. Yes, of course, there are criticism a lot about alienated forms of tourism as not culture, because such kind of tourism is is an alienation. Okay, but we can find also a lot of cultural forms. For example, watching cinema, Rambo in a cinema is also alienated form of culture. But why the classification for example, watching films, watching movies is a culture and tourism is not? Why? Let's start. I think that in its essence, tourism is a socio-cultural phenomenon that simultaneously expresses a triple mutation. You change the place, you change your sociabilities, and you change yourself. This is at the same time. Changing scenario, changing relationships, you change yourself. Why? Because routine, because some kinds of cultural norms in your place of residence makes you blind to the world. When you change the scenario, change relationships, you have to restart. Restart for what? For searching of meaning, for searching of your authentic self. Another thing to say that it's that tourism is a self-seeking process of meeting others. That needs for that self-seeking, you have to meet others and being elsewhere in remote place. Of course, to be tourist, you have to use transports, you have to use any kind of services that supply is creating. But the more important, you have to consider that it's tourism don't start from the supply. Supply is very important, is needed. Tourism industry is very important, but it exists just because there are a quest, an unconscious quest, that is demand, tourism demand is not so totally conscious. People need to find themselves to be tourists. So this unconscious quest creates demand, and demand needs supply. This is why I think that demand guides supply, not the opposite. As I said before, it is true that tourism consumption reveals very high levels of alienation in many types of tourism. But the same you can find in other cultural behaviors. As I said, I spoke about cinema, but there are a lot of other cultural forms that, for example, video gaming. Video gaming is also a high level of alienation. But we can consider that video games are entertainment, and some of them are used for education, etc. So culture is also included in this industry. All the industries exist in framework of culture. So depending of the content of social practices, they are alienated or they are they have deep meaning. Doesn't matter. We can separate, for example, public of good films as cultural public and public of bad films as alienated people. So this part of cinema is not culture. This kind of differentiation is impossible. It's the same like to differentiate in a sanctuary, differentiate who is tourist and who is not. Who comes by feelings, pure feelings, and who comes just like observer. This is a question of Inquisition, the Catholic Inquisition, to decide what people have in mind. Our task as researchers is not to judge people. We have to create good categories to understand the world. So, the real reason why tourism is linked to economics and not with tourism is that in beginning, 50 years ago or 60 years ago, most of tourism was international tourism, incoming tourism. This was the first theory of tourism was about incoming tourism. People come to Spain, people come to Italy, to Greece, after to Portugal, and it was watched as, analyzed as inflow of foreign exchange. But we have to consider also the other side of the coin. There are outgoing tourism. There are domestic tourism of national citizens. So, if for politicians, for governments, tourism is important because it means it's a kind of export. This is the inflow of foreign exchange. This is only the half of the story. We have to consider also the opposite movement.
Okay.
But I'm finishing. It's very evident. It's very evident. But why no one care about that? Look, if you go to travel to centuries ago, you find the Grand Tour. Grand Tour was very important and was considered an important cultural milestone for development of young people. Go abroad was considered culture, important element of culture and individual development. A kind of rite of passage and the enculturation of young people. A kind of sine qua non condition to be accepted in society of adults. So, at the beginning, the theorization of tourism was correct. Now, it's wrong. Why? I'm finishing. Nothing was changed about outgoing tourism. Of course, low-class people have known some conditions, same conditions like the young aristocrat from 18th century. But the essence is the same. But because it's very important to care about foreign exchange inflow, and at the same time it's very important to ignore the opposite movement. Why? If is outgoing tourism was considered a cultural important act, governments should encourage this movement. And this movement is not good for economics. This is my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's clear that to change is the key word of the transition, according to you. I know that to change is also the key of transition for Mona Selim, that is connected from Tehran. Welcome, Mona.
Hello, welcome.
Okay, welcome. You are online in the conference. In our cities and territories we live, and we want to live after the transition. Meaning, the keyword change, I'm sure for you, is connected to space and the urban planning. We are keen to know your opinion about. Okay.
Can I start? Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm happy we meet you. I can meet you again. Thank you, Aldo, for inviting me in this meeting. The question was very big and very important, but I try in this time describe our situation at the moment. And the end, I try to mention some questions about the space making and place making. With a start of pandemic, the people demands of spaces have changed. It is illustrating for us a need for thoughts about create a space. Today we involved with two kinds of spaces, physical spaces and digital spaces. Enrico explained about it. In this matter, it's not new. This matter has excited before. But during this pandemic, we had to realize it, accept it, and adapt ourselves to it. During the pandemic, what did happen for the meaning and features of spaces? First one is about location. The location of activities changed. Some activities have shifted from physical spaces to digital spaces, like education, many official jobs and business, meetings, events, etc. Some activities have shifted from indoors to outdoors. For example, some family and friendly gathering, official events, ceremonies, some sport, and some kind of entertainment. Some activities have lost the significance and their need to space. For example, the need to big store shopping, the big salon for cinema. Now this activity is very low in the cities, and these salons is empty for 2 years. And vice versa, demands for some function are increasing, like commercial storage. In many cities, there are a big demands for these places because the digital activity, digital marketing is increasing, is very active, and then now in many cities there is a problem for providing a place for storage. And also during the pandemic, the feature of the spaces changed. For example, people ask some new qualities in their houses. They had to stay a long time in a place, in a house, and they discover some new qualities in their home. People ask some new qualities in their workplaces, workspaces, because they need be safe and have some social distance. And also some needs for social spaces in public spaces is very new. Therefore, the role of spaces and feature of them are changing in our life. Now, we can, these changes in two scopes. Indoor spaces, mainly private and semi-private in field of architecture, and outdoor spaces in city in field of urban planning and design. On this base, we will have a huge transformation in creating the space and place. And we had to meet with some big questions. The first one is how much these changes are in compatibility with regeneration of human culture and civilization. And in the second one is in the process of fighting the pandemic and solving the economic problems, how much we have kept in sustainable path. In the other word, a big goal in architecture and urban design is converting a space to place. This is a big responsibility in architecture because a space cannot have an identity, but place has a strong identity. Place is where we make memories, love, and our stories in the city. And in this new era, we should find a new way for keeping in this goal. The third question of mine is how the process of placemaking can be done for virtual spaces. In these new spaces, in the digital spaces, how we can find our needs in a place. And the last question is what should be the paradigm shift about the concept of space? I tried to, in a simple process, describe the situation about the converting from a space to place. In this paradigm shift is happening in the world, in cities and private places. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mona. And please keep in touch because the transition starts today and according to my opinion, it will be international or not. Thank you very much to all of you for your opinion, your passion, your presence in the conference. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Ciao, personalmente grazie a tutti perché mi sembra Sergio che i due punti che tu hai trattato, saper fare, e qui ce n'erano 4 completamente diversi. Definizione dei bisogni, l'hai visto da chi progetta gli spazi per un nuovo intrattenimento a chi deve gestire i big data sull'intelligenza artificiale. Mi sembra che ci siano 4 conflitti, tutti e 4 estremamente interessanti. Poi non si può fare tutto nella vita, ma la politica li deve mettere in ordine. Grazie a tutti quanti voi.
Grazie a te, grazie davvero. Noi abbiamo una mezz'oretta.